for the Pioneer viewers. As you know, our agenda is the Russia-Ukraine war. We know that the war is in the full swing on the front line. There are constant clashes and both sides are preparing to make their next move. The successes of both sides on the front line is being used as political leverage. It is reported that the Russian army is becoming very weak militarily. Faced with the problems with military mobilization, the Moscow administration started looking for soldiers to send to the front line. The states needs to build their armies from their own citizens because the sense of belonging and the esprit is known as a very important factor. Defending one's own country and fighting on behalf of one's own country is a factor that makes its impact felt. The Russian army is not having good luck with its frontline soldiers. The situation of the soldiers at the front line is not sufficient to continue the war, while the process of the replacing frontline troops also poses new problems. The Kremlin has developed new methods with public participations in military mobilizations has been low. Russia has advertised for mercenary soldiers in countries such as Armenia and Kazakhstan and is trying every means to solve the soldiers' problem. Russia's plan did not meet expectations in Crimea region. While Russia is struggling with the troops' problem, it is also launching attacks on Ukraine. Ukrainian Defense successfully prevented the Russian attacks last night. The Russian army launched an attack on the Ukraine with the unmanned aerial vehicles and was repelled by the Ukrainian Defense. If you're ready now, let's examine the failed plan of the Russian army in Crimea and the successes of the Ukrainian Defense. Last night, the Russian army launched an attack on Ukrainian territory. Before the attack, Ukrainian military intelligence had made the necessary preparations. Ukrainian military intelligence is closely monitoring units of the Russian army. The Ukrainian military success in the field of military intelligence provides important opportunities to prevent Russian military attacks. The Ukrainian Air Force, which prevented the attacks thanks to the information provided by the Ukrainian military intelligence, made statements about the attack. According to the statements made by the Ukrainian Air Force, Ukrainian Defense destroyed 6 Russian drones. The attack by the Russian troops on the Kherson and Mykolaiv region was met with the Ukrainian Defense. Ukrainian Defense is working hard to maintain air superiority in the region. The drones used by the Russian army in the attack are known as the Iranian-made Shahed 136-131 model. Since the beginning of the war, the Russian army has lost dozens of drones. The cost of the losses of the Russian army exceed millions of dollars. Although the work of the Russian authorities and the subject continues, it is getting harder and harder to compensate for the losses. The Moscow administration, which is experiencing difficult economic times, is trying to compensate for this, but it seems difficult to compensate. According to the data released by the General Staff of the Armed Forces of Ukraine, Russia has lost 5,390 tactical drones since the beginning of the war. There has been no statements from the Russian authorities against the data released by the Ukrainian army. While the Russian army is experiencing economic problems, it is also having difficulties in the recruiting soldiers. Recruitment activities in the mainland Russia have not reached the desired level. In addition, Russia's plan over Crimea have also failed according to the information we have obtained. The Russian army, which tries to recruit soldiers from Crimea to fight in Ukraine, faced a backlash. Russian forces have suffered major troop losses, especially after launching an offensive on the Avdiivka and the Donetsk region this month. The Ukrainian National Center of Resistance said Russia's attempts to recruit from Crimea Peninsula, which is annexed in 2014, to replenish its dwindling troops numbers have failed. Crimean residents are leaving the peninsula and fleeing mobilization, the National Center of the Resistance of Ukraine said. The leadership of the leading recruitment centers said that the plan to forcibly recruit local residents into the occupying troops will not be implemented. Faced with the public outcry, the Russian military suspended operations in the region. Even the Russian territory recruitment is far from reaching the desired level. The public outcry against the Kremlin is growing day by day. As the situation of the Russian troops worsens, the families of the soldiers are experiencing great anxiety. For this reason, the number of disasters is on the rise. Some young people are also trying to escape from Russia. The Putin administration, which cannot get the support of the people, is very complaining about this issue. Prior to Vladimir Putin's full-scale invasion of Ukraine in February 2022, non-governmental organizations said that Russian authorities were recruiting soldiers to serve in the Russian armed forces on the peninsula. which Russia seized in 2014 in violation of international law. The National Center of Resistance of Ukraine said that Russia's mobilizations of residents in the occupied territories is an international crime, and anyone responsible for these actions will be held accountable, calling on residents to report the collaborator. In September 2022, Putin announced that the partial mobilization of forces that were not officially cancelled. This announcement was followed by reports of poor military training, military command, and equipment. Added to this was the immigration of Russians who wanted to avoid the draft. As a result, Russia's conscription problems have steadily increased. However, Russian lawmakers have made it harder for citizens to avoid military services after raising the age of conscription for men from 27 to 30. Soldiers were also banned from leaving the country after the registration office sent them their draft notices. While different allegations about Russia's military plans were on the agenda, the news that emerged attracted attention. According to reports published by the Research Institute, Russian authorities are using Ukrainian prisoners of war in violation of the Geneva Convention. The reports state that Russian authorities are forcing Ukrainian prisoners to fight for Moscow. The Baghdin Khmelnytsky battalion, consisted of about 70 Ukrainian prisoners of war, has also been documented by the Russian media organizations. Russia was also criticized with heavy accusations in the statements made by the US the other day. According to the US statements, the Russian army executes soldiers who do not obey orders. He also stated that units withdrawing from the front line were warned with the death threats. While the accusations against the Russian army are increasing, no statement has been made by the Russian authorities. It is thought that the Russian officials refrain from making statements. For this reason, local sources are trying to obtain news. According to local sources, the accusations have a grain of truth. It is stated that the Russian army applies psychological and physical pressure under the name of training by applying violence to its own soldiers in training camps. The Russian army is also a target of criticisms for the solution methods it finds against the problems it faces. A statement on the issue is expected in the coming days. How do you interpret Russia's troops recruitment problems? Do you think the Russian authorities' attempt to recruit troops from Crimea is necessary? What do you think about the success of the Ukrainian army in preventing the Russian attack? What do you think about the accusations against the Russian army? We value your opinion. Please share it with us.